Starting development back in 2006, what was at first a project ripe with so much potential was eventually reworked over the years into possibly one of the more controversial entries for the Final Fantasy series. It all began with a young man, Noctis, a prince, waking up and riding at the back of a car, a beautiful car, the Regalia. From there, the idea was simple. This was a fantasy based on reality, less about the traditional fantasy elements like warriors of light fighting evil, and instead refocusing on a dark, gritty, and gothic type of world. This game was made to be a part of the Fabula Nova Crystallis series, a shared mythos involving deities such as Benevels and Etro, placed within many different universes and interpretations. At the time, it was built of 3 games specifically: Final Fantasy 13, Versus 13, and Agito 13. This wasn't a shared universe like, say, the MCU, but rather it was an attempt at striking a middle ground of sorts between the traditional disconnected worlds that you usually see in Final Fantasy and the more shared and interconnected worlds shown in other RPGs such as Kingdom Hearts. I will be talking about the other members of this notable subseries in future videos, but for right now, I wanted to talk about this game. After years of development struggles, a shift in production occurred somewhere after 2013 began, with Nomura being slowly replaced with Hajime Tabata, initially as a co-director, but Nomura eventually left to work on Kingdom Hearts 3 and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Versus 13 would also get rebranded into a mainline title, becoming what we would now know as Final Fantasy 15. The Fabula Nova elements are still there, but only made a bit more subtle. The Kingdom of Lucia still worship Atro, as shown in the Kingslave movie, but no one in the game itself openly talks about it. Instead, it is represented visually through characters like Noctis, the Crownsguard, and their tendency to wear all black like you would at a funeral. It's all visual storytelling. Unlike other video discussions, I will do my best to keep this short and spoiler-free, as much as possible anyways, so that others can maintain their surprise when jumping into this game for the very first time. The story follows Noctis Calum, heir prince to the Kingdom of Lucia, sent out by his father King Regis to marry the heavenly Lunafreya, Nox Floret, in order to secure peace talks between the Lucian people and the Empire of Niflheim after years of political struggles. Noctis, accompanied by his loyal companions Prompto, Ignis, and Gladiolus, end up on their road trip stranded because someone forgot to fill up for gas prior to leaving. Now they have to do a bunch of side quests as they travel to Altissa, where Noctis will rendezvous with Lunafreya to be married. Cut back to Insomnia, where the plot of Kingslave happens. Yeah, I get to review a video game and a movie at the same time, huh?
Stratos, he's in your hands.
Anyways, Nix Ulrich, a member of an elite special unit known as the Kingsglaive, uncovers a conspiracy that leads into an invasion on Insomnia by the Niflheim forces, ultimately leading into the death of King Regis and the theft of Lucius's prized crystal that serves as the source of their magic. Returning to FF15, Noctis and friends pick up on the news regarding Insomnia's downfall. They maintain their goal of meeting up with Lunafreya at Altissia, but refocus on taking down the Niflheim Empire and getting back to Lucius' crystal. And that's pretty much it for this plot summary. Again, I didn't want to get into spoiler territory, or at least not too much of it if necessary, so there you go. Without giving away too much, I will say that the story reveals very, very basic. When compared to its predecessors, mainly referring to Final Fantasy 13, not counting the MMO, but I guess that to a degree, FF15 delivers the story in a very clear and cut direction that isn't at all that hard to follow. It's just kind of just bare bones a little. There's some twists here and there, but for the most part it feels more like a Dragon Quest game than it does Final Fantasy, where most of the tropes that you would find in Dragon Quest being kind of reimagined with a very modern urban fantasy kind of coat of paint. You play as a prince, which kind of functions as a hero class than say a black mage or a fighter. FF15 is one of those stories where the Chosen One plot isn't really done well at all, but the journey of getting there is what makes up for it, to an extent. And the reason for that is mainly to do with the open world and side quests. I know some people aren't really fond of side quests, citing them as repetitive and mostly filler, and to an extent, I agree. The way I see it is that side quests function as a more proactive form of level grinding. Rather than bashing your weapons against the same enemy over and over and over, you talk up an NPC, go on a road trip, kill as many random enemies you encounter along the way, and gain XP from that. Well, no doubt Tetsuya Nomura had a very different idea in mind as to the fantasy based on reality bit for Versus 13, I do think Final Fantasy 15 does an excellent job with its own interpretation on that saying. Various locations such as Golden Key and Hammerhead feel like places that actually exist in our real world. The animals and wildlife are by far some of the strangest creatures you have ever seen, like something out of Star Wars, yet they behave and move as you would expect those from our real world animals. The story is by no means great, but the setting is easily one of my personal favorites, and is easily the primary reason why I always come back to Final Fantasy 15 overall, despite my issues with it. Even the movie, Kingsglaive, looks so beautiful with its realistic aesthetics, how it resembles a live-action production thanks to the amount of quality put into the movie. There was a serious attempt at creating an urban fantasy setting that was seamless with its fantastical element. From the amount of detail shown in both daytime and nighttime, the city of Insomnia felt like an actual place vibrant with life. Marking the first number entry to officially shift away from turn-based combat, Final Fantasy XV is an action RPG very much in line with Kingdom Hearts, but with some minor differences. This wasn't the first game period within Final Fantasy to ditch the gameplay style. That would be Crisis Core, or Dirge of Cerberus, if you want to be technical. Final Fantasy XV is merely the first numbered entry to go this route, with FF16 following in the trend afterwards. In fairness, this obviously wasn't intentional, as the game was originally intended to be a side project within the Fabula Nova series. Being originally developed by the same team who had worked on Kingdom Hearts 2, it is a no-brainer that the gameplay would take a striking similarities. Maintaining that action RPG direction is just an artifact of that old development history. The initial vision was no doubt closer to Kingdom Hearts due to the similar UI, but the shift from Versus 13 to 15 had obviously led to a complete restart in that overall design. The resemblance is still there, but in terms of control schemes and feel, it is noticeably very different. When I first got this game, I was very eager to get into the city area of Insomnia, as it was the first time that Final Fantasy had ever made a big city that you could run around and explore. It was kind of the closest thing that they had ever done that was basically a GTA clone by that point, I think. Unfortunately, the early bit from the trailer was pretty much scrapped. The only time you actually go back to Insomnia is extremely late into the game. As such, the open world you see taking place within the Lucius region is what you get. It gets more linear as the game goes on. This game was seriously rushed to the point where they wanted to do more open world areas, but didn't have enough time to really explore and flesh them out. In hindsight, I feel like they could have just taken a page from Dragon's Dogma, where they just simply cut some corners and centered the whole game within the Lucius region, and add in a little snow area, an explorable Insomnia, and you have all you really need for a satisfying game. Sure, it would have been a little disappointing to some people, myself included, but I feel like it would have been tolerable at the very least. While Final Fantasy XV is by no means a perfect delivery of the dream, that vision which Tetsuya Nomura had such passion for, I do think this game has plenty of virtues on its own. Hajime Tabata was truly at his best trying to deliver what was promised, and then some, among other things. He wasn't trying to be snobby, he wasn't trying to be this arrogant Tetsuya Nomura replacement or whatever. He genuinely tried his best in making this game as good as possible before deciding to leave. It should be noted that Tabata mainly specialized in mobile games that were built for phones and handhelds, a demographic that is very, very different to that of console games. Here, he was tasked with something out of his element. He was made to direct the game designed for, at the time, the next generation of home consoles, and delivered on time within just 3 years of development. Thank you all for watching. I've been wanting to make a video talking about this for some time, and to really get out of my system the things I felt like needing to say. I have fond memories with Final Fantasy Versus 13, and I still enjoy FF15 on its own merits. Hopefully one day we might see Versus 13 come back in some form, and FF15 will get ported to Switch too. Hey, a man can dream, right? Stay tuned for next time. Hit that like button, subscribe, ring the bell, and have a wonderful day. Be excellent, everybody. See ya.